let's have a look at how do you actually take a block of text and summarize it. How do you break it down? So we'll go through the thought processes that you go through. So if we look at this first part, we're looking at the causes of World War I, and we've got a date here. So it says we'll start with the facts and work back. It may make it easier to understand how that happened. Well, we don't need to write that down because it doesn't give us any information about what actually happened. The events of July and early August 1914 are a classic case of one thing led to another. Again, that's fairly vague. I wouldn't write anything at this stage. The explosive that was World War I had been long in the stockpiling. The spark was the assassination of this dude. He was heir to this throne on this date. Now that's something important. So we're going to add that here. Firstly, we might want to put a general comment. It says that the events or what sparked World War I had been long in the stockpiling. So previous events had been leading to the explosion of World War I. And then what actually happened? So first spark, so we'll actually put that. First spark, assassination. I'm just going to cut and paste this. So the first spark was the assassination of this guy on this date. Right, continuing down, I'll put a space between those. It's good to space out your content there. Ferdinand's death at the hands of the Black Hand, a Serbian nationalist secret society, set in train a mindlessly mechanical series of events that ended up in the world's first global war. Do we need to put who actually did it? Maybe so. It depends how much detail. We could put in brackets here. So assassination of this guy by Black Hand, Serbian, and we'll put a colon, Serbian Nationalist Secret Society. Now this point's getting pretty long, so I reckon I'm going to break this down and make that first spark a heading and then sort of put the subheadings underneath. So first spark, assassination of this guy by these people. Now I'm going to move this bit up because the fact that he's the heir to the throne actually relates to the earlier points. So I'll move that one up. And I'm going to break the date down. So I've got all the points broken down a bit better here. We'll underline that. Alright, so we got up to here. Set and try and train a mechanical global First World War. Okay, so we know we're talking about cause of First World War. So the next section says Austria-Hungary's reaction. So the reaction to the death of this guy, who was in any case not greatly beloved by the emperor or his government, probably not really relevant at this stage. We're looking at causes of World War I. Was 3 weeks in coming, so 3 weeks before they reacted, arguing that the Serbian government was implicated in the machinations of the Black Hand. So they thought that the Serbian government was involved, and the first thing you've got to do when you summarise is understand what they're talking about. Impossible to summarise otherwise. So Austria reacted 3 weeks later, and they argued that it was the Serbian government was actually involved, and we don't really know whether they were, but it appears unlikely. So they decided to stamp their authority on the Serbians, crushing the national movement there and cementing Austria-Hungary's influence in the Balkans. So we probably need a heading like they've got over there, Austria-Hungary reaction. And now we need to break that down. So we don't need to write here that they're reacting to the death of this guy because we've got it just above. We know he was assassinated and that's what happened. So we're talking about the reaction to what happened. So they argued Serbia was involved. Try and put it into your own words and make it simpler if you can. So they argued Serbia was involved. Appears unlikely. This was the case. They took the opportunity to stamp authority on the Serbians, crushing the nationalist movement there. Okay, so we don't need to put the stamp its authority because crushing the nationalist movement really says that. So took the opportunity to crush nationalist movement. And actually, I've just noticed that I had capitals here but not here. I think it looks better and clearer with capitals, so I'm going to go back and change that. You'll find with your study notes, this is why a lot of people choose to type them, even though handwriting does have an advantage if you're handwriting the exams, but does make it much easier to go back and change and update things. So they took the opportunity to cross the nationalist movement. This cemented... Now, I'm not going to write the whole thing, I'm just going to use abbreviations. This cemented their influence in the Balkans. Right, now this bit's telling it how it did it. So it did so by issuing an ultimatum to Serbia. Right, so this is sort of like the second section of how it did it. So I'll start putting points, but I might separate them. So ultimatum, oops, got an extra I, to Serbia, which in the extent of its demand that the assassins be brought to justice. I don't understand that. Try again. It did so by issuing an ultimatum to Serbia, which, in the extent of its demand that the assassins be brought to justice, effectively nullified Serbia's sovereignty. So ultimatum to Serbia to bring assassins to justice. This nullified Serbia's sovereignty. And then it goes on. Sir Edward Grey, the British Foreign Secretary, was moved to comment that he had never seen one state addressed to another independent state a document of so formidable a character. So this threat perhaps nullified Serbia's sovereignty. I don't think we need to put that quote. I think we've got enough information there explaining what actually happened, so that's okay. Continues on. Austria-Hungary's expectation was that Serbia would reject these remarkably severe terms, therefore giving her pretext to launch a war. So we need to break this down. So Austria-Hungary reaction, argue that Serbia was involved. Appears unlikely it was the case. It took the opportunity. And then, so let's write here, this is what it actually did. Ultimatum issued. We'll underline that. Forgot the L there. So ultimatum was issued. To bring the sessions, it nullified Serbia's sovereignty. Now I'm just going to move this down simply so we can see it on the same screen. So we're up to here. Never before have we seen one state address another. So it's obviously a very threatening document. So let's add an extra word in here. Severe ultimatum. To bring the assassins, and expected Serbia to reject. Would give Austria-Hungary pretext for war, pretext for invasion. They don't actually say invasion, do they? So maybe just for war. Okay, so what happens next? So they expect they reject it. That will give them a pretext for war. That's all about the ultimatum. However, Serbia had long Slavic ties with Russia, which was a very different proposition for Austria-Hungary. Didn't really expect that Russia would be drawn into the dispute to any great extent other than through diplomatic protest. So the Austro-Hungarian government sought assurance from Germany that they would come to the aid if Russia declared war. So Germany agreed, and even encourage that. Okay, so ultimatum issued. Now, what's the sort of word that would summarize what we're talking about here? I guess it's really the alliances. So maybe effect of alliances, because I imagine what's going to happen is that these alliances are going to lead to all sorts of issues. So they expected the Serbia to reject. That would give them a pretext for war. Okay, Serbia had long ties with Russia. Serbia had long ties with Russia. Austria-Hungary did not expect I was going to say did not expect Russia to be involved, but it says maybe put did not expect more than diplomatic protest from Russia. So the government sought assurances from Germany that they'd come to their aid. Just in case Austria-Hungary approached Germany, which is ally. I don't think that's how you spell ally, but anyway. Just in case Austria-Hungary approached Germany, an ally, to agree to come to aid if war with Russia. Germany agreed, encouraged Austria-Hungary. I think that's it. That's as far as it gets. Well, very exciting. Certainly the first stage of, I think, what's a long process. Now, we'll move this back and we'll just have a look. Okay, so we're talking about World War I causes. That's just a general statement. So I'm going to make this as our main heading. I'll make it a bit bigger, and I'll put that in italics just so that I know this is just sort of a section. Then we've got a few things. We've got the first spark, the reaction, the ultimatum, and the effect of the alliances. Now, if we look at these two sides, let's focus on this side first of all. Imagine trying to learn that. What you're saying is there's all this extra stuff that's in there. What you're doing in your study notes is you're going, okay, how can I take out the key parts here and break it down? Now, notice how often, rather than have too many bullet points, we try to aim for no more than about 7 bullet points per heading. So if I find that I'm getting lots of bullet points, I go, okay, like back here. Originally this point was under here, and I thought, no, this is going to go on for a long time yet, so I'm going to break it down. What am I actually talking about? The ultimatum being issued. So that becomes a new heading. That side on the right here, well, on my right, on your left, I don't know, but this side here is going to make it much easier to learn than the other side, because you look at that and you think, oh, how do you even begin? But this is doable. You go, right, I've got to learn about the first spark there, 4 points. 4 points for Austria-Hungary reaction. 4 points for the ultimatum issued. 4 points for the section on the effect of alliances. Actually, it's quite nice that it worked out 4 points for each, because it's easier to remember. You just know for each heading there's 4 things I've got to remember. And that's really how you do it. So you can see there's no perfect approach at getting it exactly right. The process I go through is I read it out, I try and understand what it's saying, and then I sort of try and put it into my own words, and then work out, well, what actually do I need to write down? And once I've written it down, then I sort of look at it and go, okay, does that make sense? Can I break it down? Does anything else need to be taken a bit further? And that's how you make study notes.